And I'm sure many of you have taken the train over to Venice or to some other place before. This is what it looks like. And I actually had a very, very unique experience during this train, which, looking back, got me thinking a lot about business and the future of work today. So what happened is we took this train, and on the way back, we took the last train back from Venice, which I think was around midnight. And so we're on the train back from Venice, and we make all the stops along the way. And we make a stop somewhere, and there's a delay for 35 minutes. And everything's going on in Italian, so I don't understand anything that's happening, right? Nothing. And so I go outside, and I see it says, somebody told me it's a 35-minute delay, so I figured, okay, why would I sit on the train for 35 minutes? I'll get off the train and walk around for a little bit. It's midnight, it's a random place, seems like a good idea, right? Meanwhile, my fiance is asleep in one of the chairs. So I'm outside, talking to somebody, and all of a sudden the doors to the train close. And the train starts moving. The guy that I was standing with outside jumps through this window to get on the train. And I'm just standing there, and all of a sudden these two Italian guys that I don't know stick their arms out the window. They're like, come on, jump! And I'm standing there like, are you kidding? So I'm sprinting after this train, I jump up, these two Italian guys grab me, pull me into the window. It was like something out of a movie, so I have a debt of gratitude to the Italian people for saving my life. But then, looking back on all this, it really got me thinking, this is probably how a lot of organizations feel today. Because they're stuck on the platform, and the way that we work is changing and moving forward. And they have a choice to make. Do they stay on the platform, or do they jump through the window? And the reason for that is because work as we know it today is dead. Completely dead. It doesn't exist anymore. Everything that we know about work, everything that we've done in the past is dead. And what do I mean by that? So these are actual synonyms, and I use this slide quite a lot because I think it's an important slide to put up. These are actual synonyms taken from the dictionary of what it means to be an employee, a manager, what it means to work, and what it means to work at a company. Now if you look at some of the synonyms, these are again actual synonyms. I didn't make this up. Work, drudgery, struggle, daily grind. Employee is a cog, a servant, or a slave. A manager is a slave driver, a zookeeper. So essentially what this means when you think about it is that we are all cogs going through our daily struggle as we work for a slave driver. This is the notion of work that is dead. It no longer exists. So everything that we know about social, about the web, about Enterprise 2.0, social business, whatever you want to call it, is changing everything we know about work. And not just work, but everything related to work. It changes how we communicate, how we share, how we learn, how we educate, how we teach. Everything is being completely transformed by what we're seeing today. And it's forcing organizations to look at and answer some very, very basic questions. And these are questions that we need to ask, before we think about technology, before we think about anything else. We're really forced to take a step back and look at very, very basic questions that we would have asked when we would have created these companies to begin with. For example, does our organization need 4 walls anymore? Do we need an office? Do we need a headquarters? Do we need email? How are we going to promote employees? Do we need managers? If we do need managers, what is that manager going to look like? And does our organization need to be structured as a hierarchy? So these are all very, very basic questions that organizations are starting to step back and think about. And this is before we even get to talking about technology and change management and leadership. These are very basic, how do we build our company from the ground up? And one of the reasons why a lot of this stuff is happening is because of the consumer web, right? A lot of the cues that our enterprises are taking, and a lot of what we're seeing in our organizations, is happening because of what we're seeing in our personal lives, right? It's happening because of Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, Foursquare. All these different types of platforms that we're using in our personal lives are now shifting into the enterprise. And that's something that we've never seen before. Not only are these technologies shifting into the enterprise, but so are the behaviors that come with those technologies. We're much more comfortable living in an open world now, right? We share things about ourselves on Twitter. We put up our favorite books on Facebook. We put up pictures. We use Foursquare to check in where we are. We use Pinterest to put up images that we like, right? We are so comfortable living in a public world. We're so comfortable with sharing information, with engaging with random people, with putting our thoughts all over the web. Why is it that we can't do this within our organizations? Why is it so hard for us to find information? Why is it so hard for us to communicate with other people or to find the people that we need to work with? So a lot of what we're seeing in our personal lives in the consumer web is shifting into the enterprise, and organizations now have to adapt. So when we think of the future of work, what does the future of work actually look like? So we've worked with, talked to, researched hundreds of companies, and at the end of the day, a lot of people look at the future of work as it relates to an employee, a manager, the company as a whole, and technology. So when we think of work, that is what we think of. And these are the four things that I'm going to look at today: the employee, the manager, the company, and technology. So this is what the employee used to look like. An employee used to be a pawn within your company, right? Just a pawn, a cog. An employee used to feel stuck. They were not connected. They were not engaged. They were not motivated. They had no desire to do a lot of things because they were just a cog. They were just, as the synonym said, a slave, a servant. They were just there to get something done, not ask any questions. Now, what's really interesting is that this isn't how we act in our personal lives, right? The technologies that we use and the way we act, it's easy for us to find information. It's easier for us to join and create communities. It's easy for us to live a public life, to learn, to educate, to teach others. So there's a big disconnect between what we're seeing. This is my little brother. I use him in probably almost every single presentation I ever give. And he never knows that he's in any of these. But I use him in these presentations for a very specific reason. So his name is Josh. He lives in LA, still with my parents back home. And he's turning 21 this year. And he's actually in school. He's studying a lot about math and science and accounting. But what's really interesting in this picture is that he's holding a bunch of very, very expensive cameras. This camera right here is probably around $8,000. This one's probably around $4,000 or $5,000. He has green screens, he has microphones, he has a whole movie studio in my parents' living room. And what's really interesting is that you look at this and you say, how is this kid that's going to be 21 learning how to do all this? He never went to school for film. He never went to school for editing or for photography or for videography. So how is this 21-year-old kid learning how to do all of this type of stuff? And how is he learning how to build a business out of it? And how much is it costing him? I'll tell you that everything he's learned how to do, he learned for free. Through YouTube, through discussion forums, through communities. And he's been able to build a business for himself for free. Now, when I went to school, I knew a lot of people that were majoring in film. And, they were in school for 3-4 years, spending, $60, $70, $80, $100,000 to learn how to do this. And this just goes to show how the world is changing. This is the future employee. This is who is going to be working at all of your companies within the next couple of years. Now, when this person comes to work in your company, how is he going to respond when he says, great, I'm so happy to be here. It's nice to meet you. How do I start talking to people? How do I start engaging with people? Where do I go to find information? And how is this person going to react when you say, oh, sorry, you're probably going to get 150 to 200 emails a day. Here are 10 usernames, 10 passwords, and 10 different websites that you need to go to get all your work done. Here's a cubicle for you to sit at. Here's a phone. Good luck. And here's a big training manual for you to read. How is this person going to fit into that type of a work setting? And the answer is he's not. There's no incentive. If you want to attract and retain top talent, that type of a mindset and that type of an organization is not going to work. So this is the future employee, and this is who a lot of organizations need to adapt to. What about managers? What did the manager of the past look like? Now I should point out that a lot of our organizations, when they were built, a lot of them were modeled after the military, right? Everybody wore the same thing, everybody came into work at the same time, everybody ate the same thing, everybody talked to the same people, same computer, same everything, right? It was kind of like an assembly line. So that is how our organizations were created, right? They were all modeled after the military. And the manager was the general. The manager was the one that led by fear, command and control. Don't ask me any questions, I have the information, you do what I tell you to do or you're not going to work here anymore. That's what the manager used to look like. Managers made the decisions, they kept the information to themselves, and they ran the company like an army. That type of a manager is dead. So what does a manager of the future look like? The manager of the future listens to the voice of the employee. The manager of the future believes in collective intelligence. The manager of the future shares information and opens up and believes in engaging his team instead of running it like a military. The manager of the future believes in the employee experience. The manager of the future believes in real-time or faster feedback instead of annual or semi-annual employee reviews. And the manager of the future believes in breaking conformity. He believes in entrepreneurship and in building and in growing the organization and in innovation. That is what the manager of the future looks like. Not running their organization as if it's military and not being a general. What about organizations as a whole? What did our organizations used to look like? Our organizations used to look like this. They were very much focused on individual contributions and recognitions. They were built like a pyramid. They were very much focused on email, on push messaging, and on using technologies that didn't focus on the network and that didn't focus on the people. That is what the company of the past used to look like. We used to reward people that made the most money. If you look at any financial institution, whether it's Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase, any financial institution you want, typically, the traditional structure has always been, if you bring in the most money, we will promote you. And when you get promoted, you become a manager and get to manage other people. Is that who we want managing and motivating and engaging our employees, the people that bring in the most money just because they brought in the most money? Those aren't the people that know how to manage. So we need to really think about who we want running our organizations, and it has nothing to do with how much money that they as an individual are able to bring in. So this is what companies of the past look like and what they used to focus on. It was essentially a house of cards. It wasn't sustainable, right? It wasn't something that was able to work in the long run. What about companies of the future? Companies of the future reward collaborators. They're transparent, they're distributed, they focus on outcomes. They want employees to be there. They allow employees to take their own paths, part of what I like to call customized work, where you don't have to climb a ladder, you build your ladder. You choose where you want to move within your organization. That's what the company of the future looks like. And it really focuses on the employee experience. Finally, technology. Technology, not something I like to focus on, but inherently within a lot of organizations, it acts as the scalable glue that puts everything together. Now, technologies of the past weren't social, they weren't collaborative, they didn't focus on the network, they didn't focus on the group as a whole, they focused on individuals. They weren't scalable, they didn't allow you to do much. And they were built very much around legacy capabilities. They were rigid, they weren't flexible. And there was a lack of depth and breadth. Technologies of the future are completely different. They're smart platforms. They're controlled by the users. They allow us to build communities. They allow us to engage with people. They allow us to open doors instead of close them. And what organizations are starting to figure out and trying to figure out is how can they adapt to the changes in behavior and technology to build a connected and an engaged organization. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. We never know what tomorrow's going to bring. But the only thing that we can be certain of is that there's more uncertainty. And in that type of environment where you're never sure what tomorrow's going to bring, what type of an organization do you want to be and how do you want to approach that future? Do you want to do it in a siloed, hierarchical way, or do you want to do it in an engaged and in a collaborative way? And I'll tell you, the organizations that focus on building a collaborative organization are the ones that are going to succeed tomorrow. So at the end of the day, train might be a little awkward, it might be uncomfortable, it might get us out of our comfort zone, but it's something that we all need to do, because it's far riskier to stay on the platform than it is to jump in the train.